Welcome to the Celtic State of Mind. I'm John Dykes, and on the Bulletin today I'm joined by Lawrence Connolly and Brian Degning. Welcome back to the show, guys. Welcome back to the studio, Lawrence. Plenty to discuss in the world of Celtic. Brian, let's get off to a positive start with the news this morning following the revelations over the last few days that we're in to sign Joe Hart. He's having a medical today prior to signing for what is reported to be £1 million. He's a goalkeeper with a vast wealth of experience. What's your thoughts on this? I mean, there's been loads of discussion on the Axon WhatsApp group all around this. I wouldn't quite say it's divided opinion as such, as a few people have got some concerns. But when you've got three goalkeepers and neither of the three is a standout number one, you've got to make some moves in the transfer market. What's your thoughts on Joe Hart?
Yeah, I think, again, it's one of those signings that I'm not overly excited about, but the bottom line is he's far better than what we have at the moment. So by that metric alone, he's a good signing. The pleasing thing about it is the fact he's took quite a sizable wage cut to come and play, which I like. It shows that maybe the attitude's there to actually go and impress, and, it's a 3-year deal as well, so he's not here just for a holiday. He's also going to come up, put a shift in, and I think his experience as well. He'll help the young defenders, and I think that he's had some rocky times, but if we can get the Scott Sinclair effect, because he was a fantastic player, he sort of peaked quite early and then fizzled out a bit until he came to Celtic, and he was excellent for us. And if we can get that sort of reaction for Joe Hart, I think it's a good signing. And as I say, the fact he's taken a wage cut and signed a 3-year deal to come here, that shows positive signs for me.
Now, I'm going to come to you, Lawrence. Brian points out that we've had players in the past who have been big players with huge potential down in English football, such as Scott Sinclair. Don't know if he can play in goals, might do better than a couple of the goalies we've got. But they've come to Celtic and they've been reinvigorated, and they've had a great period up in Scotland. Not just with the likes of Sinclair, we've probably had that with a couple of goalies as well. Good tweet this morning pointing out that Craig Gordon was one such goalkeeper. Obviously, had been out the game for a couple of years through injury. But even Fraser Forster, you think of Forster and his various loan deals at Celtic, where things weren't working out for him down south. He comes to Celtic and he was a huge success. Do you think we can have the same effect on Joe Hart, Lawrence Connolly?
Possibility's definitely there. Listen, he's shown his rumour is he's willing to take quite a large wage cut just to be playing first team football. So he's still got the hunger and the desire that he wants to play. Undoubted talent as a goalkeeper. Was it 74 caps or something for England? He's won Golden Gloves. I don't think anyone would say that he's definitely reached higher heights than any of the three keepers we've currently got. Can he recapture his form? Is what we're looking at. For me, it's positive. The worrying thing is, this was rumoured over, a week, 10 days ago. Since then, we've dropped 3 points in the league.
Yeah. And we're out of the Champions League.
Yeah, I'm not too sure he could have played second leg, but why is it taking so long to complete transfers? We're more than halfway through the transfer window. No director of football, no head of recruitment.
We're going to come into that in more depth, Lawrence, but the point you make there about him not being able to play the second leg, he's been a player of interest for longer than 10 days.
Yeah, definitely. But it was broke that we were in negotiations to sign. So he's been identified long term, but we were actually negotiating to sign him. And I could have had him in for Hearts game if we'd made those negotiations go quicker. And was it £1 million we were arguing over to Tottenham, which is the room that we're going to pay? Was it 15 grand a week? Somebody at Hearts calibre, you're going to say 15 grand a week seems a bit of a steal. £1 million. He's 34 for a keeper. It's not old. It's just frustrating that it's taken so long to get him in.
Yeah.
Could he have made a difference against Hearts? Would he have commanded his box better? I think so.
See, the thing for me, Lawrence, we're talking about him recapturing his form. Before we even get to that, and I'll ask you this one, Brian, Kelso Hunt coming in on YouTube to say that he's better than the current goalkeepers at the club. Yeah, we'll have a wee look at what this is going to leave us with, because we'll have 5 goalkeepers at the club if and when Joe Hart finally joins us. But you've got the performances, which obviously we're going to need from a goalkeeper. We've not had it for some time, Brian. But going back to some of the points Lawrence was making there, right? So he's 34 years of age, and we know that, you look at Craig Gordon, for example, and McGregor at Rangers. Goalkeepers, look at Arthur Boruc, still playing at Legia Warsaw at 42. Goalkeepers can play into their late 30s comfortably these days. In fact, outfield players, if they look after themselves, can play into their late 30s. He spent most of his career at Manchester City, 12 years at the club. A wealth of experience there, 75 England caps, 71 games in European competition, just under 550 appearances, senior appearances. He moved to Burnley in 2018 for $3.5 million. And I think that since then he's been a bit of a bit part player at Burnley, and then obviously he was looking to be the third choice at Spurs if he stayed there this season. So it's the right time certainly for him to get games. The fact that he's willing to take a wage drop is great, because we've been dealing with mercenaries. There's no better word for it, Brian, for some time when it comes to football, and just coming here for the wages, and often refusing to play or not playing to your full capacity, whilst getting massive wages. And obviously one player maybe in that bracket over the last 12 to 18 months was Ncham, who's left the building as well. So that's refreshing. But we look at the goalkeeper situation, going back to the original point that was made by Kelso there. Last season, right, so we've got 3 goalkeepers. Barkas playing 22 games, Bain 23, Hazard 6. And Hazard's games, they culminated in him being one of the heroes of the quadruple treble Scottish Cup final during the shootout. But you could ask 100 Celtic fans who the number one is, and, who knows? Who's your number one at the moment before Joe Hart comes in? It's like, you just stick a pin in a phone book, because you don't know. There's nothing differentiating between any of them. I think Bain's a number 2 at the very best. Barkas, it's not worked out for him. If Hart comes in, Brian, do we offload him on a permanent basis? Is it going to be difficult to offload him for any kind of fee? Can you see him maybe getting loaned out to try and win a deal elsewhere?
I think Barkas will definitely be off if Hart's coming in. I would imagine Barkas is on pretty sizable wages actually as well. Paid £5 million for him. Established Greek international, played in the Champions League several times. So there's a keeper there. He's just been worked out from Scotland, and that's all right. And I think if you're going to get rid of one of the keepers, he's the one that you can still sell. You can still market him well. He's had one bad season in which they can put down to COVID. So if you're his agent, you can still market him very well. I think he'll be off, and I think it'll be a permanent move. I don't see the point in loaning him out and then trying to find a buyer next year. That seems like a waste of time. Although it may take an entire year to buy a seller player, judging by the way Celtic are doing things these days. So I think Barkas will probably be off. Bain looks as if he's going to be just cover for Joe Hart still. Although it'd be interesting to see if the boy Doohan could actually do a shift as number 2 instead of Bain. But it just remains to be seen what we're actually looking for. One of the problems with Tidby keepers is this argument of you need a shot stopper, but Postecoglou wants a sweeper keeper. And I think people get carried away with this idea of the keeper being good with the ball at his feet. I don't think we need him to Pirlo at the back and pinging balls 60 yards. I think he just has to be comfortable enough to take the ball under a bit of pressure and make a 10-yard pass. You saw the keeper sort of dropping in almost as part of a back 3. You saw the amount of touches and passes Bain had to make against Hearts. And I think Joe Hart can do that. I just don't think maybe he's got the distribution that Pep Guardiola wanted. But his standards of football compared to most other people's are a different world. So Hart's ability, his experience, I think he'll fit the system well enough. Is it going to be number 1 for the next 3 years? Maybe no, but I think it's someone we need to get in, sort of steady the ship at the back that also fits the way Postecoglou plays. You were saying there, Brian, about people misinterpreting what Ange Postecoglou wants from the goalkeeper being a ball player. I think Scott Bain's maybe
misinterpreted it because he likes to try and take men on and all this kind of stuff. Being comfortable with the ball at your feet is one thing, but you can do both. I mean, you could be a shot stopper at the same time. Brian, is that too much to ask? I mean,
you need to get shots first. That's a prerequisite.
Yeah,
just nice if you can play ball as well. So I think there's a tendency to make it a choice between the two, and I think modern day footballers, where it's keepers, centre halves, have to be comfortable the way the game's played now.
Yeah.
So
you're right.
I think the days of a keeper, nobody would play with ball at his feet. They're long gone regardless. So I don't think it's too much to ask to get somebody that can do both. But of course, the priority is the hands, the big foam fingers, isn't it?
See, the thing though, Brian, you said, and it has happened, a lot of people have put this focus on the goalkeeper being comfortable with the ball at their feet. The three of us on this show, certainly on this particular bulletin, and I know we've got a younger set of hosts and contributors within the wider AXON team, but we remember the introduction to the pass-back rule. That's basically when a goalkeeper had to get more comfortable with the ball at his feet. Because, there might have been an occasion where in the past they'd have picked the ball up, but they'd maybe have to control it, pass it out, clear it, etc. And, it did affect quite a few goalkeepers' performances who, up to that point, were very, very comfortable. And then the back pass rule came in. In fact, I think it killed Leeds United. One season they're winning the league with the big long ball up to Lee Chapman and all the rest of it. Yeah, and the next season, I think Lukic and Leeds really, really struggled. So goalkeepers generally should be pretty comfortable with the ball at their feet anyway. And like you say, a lot of the time it's a simple pass left and right, in Celtic's cases, to the centre halves. Now, if he comes in and it looks likely, Lawrence Connolly, that will actually leave us currently with 5 goalkeepers at their club, with Hazard, Barkas, Bain, Hart and Duhan, who really impressed when he was on loan. But obviously that is a different level of football. What do you see happening in relation to the goalies? We don't need 5, Lawrence. Who do we keep? Who do we offload?
I'd be looking at moving both Bain and Barkas on, if possible. We'll talk about pathway. I don't think either of them are showing to be themselves better options than Hazard. So is that a pathway? Could be then look at maybe bringing in another second choice bit.
Because Hazard got a new deal last season, didn't he, Lawrence?
Yeah, so if he's not going on loan, he needs to be playing, I think, or be number 2. With Bain, it's kind of, I just don't think he's, what was it, 3 seasons ago? 3 seasons ago, he was a third choice. And well, he's now first choice. And it's not through us improving in that position or him improving. It's just through our lack of recruiting the right bodies.
No, you're right.
Barkas, it's clearly not worked for, but it's a $5 million investment. So I think it's got to be a loan. I don't think anyone's going to pay you money at the moment or anything like that we would like to recruit.
With a buyout option at the end of it.
Yeah, or even just a loan to get him in the shop window and get confidence back up. Maybe said, well, he's got quite a bit left in his contract. How much are we going to really get back for this player at this moment in time? Would a 1-year loan suit all parties, and then he's back in the shop window and maybe get some money, maybe back to Greece? I don't know. Maybe his COVID played in a part in him not settling here. But for me, I don't think Bain's the future, and I don't think, if we're bringing Hart, Bain and Barkas have got to go. I think, I don't think there should be a backup options. I think Hazard's a better backup option to Hart, and then you maybe Ross doing this talk about going out on loan again. And if that's the case, then you look to bring in a third. But if not, you've got Duhan, Hazard, 2 boys that come through the ranks, and Hart is your number 1.
Yeah, I do think we'll keep Hazard. There was talk about him going to Dundee on loan not that long ago, Brian, but he was injured at the time. He's an internationalist. Let's not forget Northern Ireland cap. He's been given a bumper contract after his 6 appearances last season. He was part of the Scottish Cup winning team, of course. And I think he will certainly be at the club. If he's loaned out, simply to be getting him back to fitness and to be getting him games. I would be surprised maybe if we lost both Barkas and Bain, unless we got the opportunity to use them as a make weight, maybe in another transfer. And we will be talking about other transfers. Now, the Monday Club spoke at length about the Hearts game on Saturday night, 8 o'clock kick-off. It was a late one in at the studio, Brian. Loads have has been spoken about that particular game. What was your biggest takeaways from it, Brian? We won't labour the fact. We've got to obviously look at the any kind of positives that we can glean from that. People are pointing to the fact that we had a massive amount of possession. We controlled the game for large parts. Sometimes it's the basics with Celtic. And nothing has changed in that respect when it comes to a ball into the box. Who wants it the most? How many Celtic players challenged for that? The winning goal for Hearts. You also look at, and I know Lawrence will be picking up on some of the horrific refereeing decisions. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't happy with Celtic's performance, but I certainly wasn't happy with the referee's performance either. For me, the goal that was ruled offside was onside by a yard. The challenge by Halliday on McGregor's are sending off every single day of the week. You actually see it from a different angle, and it's right in his ailing. You can't make an excuse for the referee not to see the severity of that challenge and how bad it could have been. I mean, you look at McGregor, brand new captain. He's been very, very influential, Brian. He scored in Europe. He's done well for Scotland in the pre-season. He looks to be somewhere back to the player we remember Callum McGregor being. We hope that he's one of the shining lights moving through this transitional period. That could have broke his ankle, Brian. So I don't want to labour the refereeing decisions, but we can't ignore them. And that's a conversation Lawrence and I had. We should have been highlighting them throughout the 9 in a row. We can't ignore when the officials' decisions are so wrong. But at the same time, there's a lot wrong with Celtic at the moment, Brian, and we need to focus on that as well. So give me some takeaways from the Hearts game. We've not had an opportunity to ask you.
I mean, you're right about the refereeing. It's amazing that he never gave a red card. I mean, I'd understand if they were on a podcast together and got on really well, then maybe that's why he never gave it. But that wouldn't happen in Scottish football because that'd be inappropriate, surely. I think that, look, anything you talk about a ref, it seems like an excuse, doesn't it? That's how it comes across, and I don't think it's the case. What I would say about the Hearts game is, if I say to you, we dominated most of the game, we should have took our chances, a goalkeeping error cost us the game. I could be talking about any game since Postecoglou's come in, probably. That could be about the Midtjylland games, either leg, or about the Hearts game. So I think the takeaways are kind of the same. I think we can see what they're trying to do. You can see the way he's trying to play. I think we've not been clinical enough up front, and it's cost us. I think the strategy, with Postecoglou, there's two schools of thought with Postecoglou's team just now. One is defence is weak, so focus on the attack. One is the defence is weak, so you need to back it up, and nobody's attacking. It's like being a boxer with a glass jaw. You either go in and put your chin down, cover up for the whole fight, and hope you counter punch, or you go in swinging and hope you land one. Either way is high risk. And you've kind of seen that with Celtic. And the bottom line is, against Hearts, if we'd have took our chances, we'd have been out of sight. But again, we didn't take our chances, and that led us to be open defensively. The main takeaways for me, actually, and I know we're going to talk about transfers, so I won't go on too much, but you look at a guy like John Souttar. Right now, I know he's been injured, but him and Halkett looked solid at the back for Hearts. Now, are they any worse than what we've got at the moment? Now, I'm not saying we should run out and sign them as the high-class, Celtic-class calibre players, but if we're so short at the back, why were they not signed? They could have signed even a 2-year deal for a couple of million, guys like that. Go them in, and at least there's bodies there. And then steady the ship and get in the players you want. I think that, and maybe those two are a great example, but my point being, we should have been looking at players in Scotland to buy in. Quick fixes, don't worry about COVID, don't worry about restrictions. They don't need to isolate for that amount of time. Get them in quickly and do the job, because you saw what a limited but organised team did to us.
Yeah.
Hearts are a decent side, don't get me wrong. I think this narrative about, they're a championship club, but they're a premiership club. There's no two ways about it. They played really well, and credit to them. We were just caught out defensively, and again, goes back to a goalkeeping error. So,
No, you're right. The point you make there about domestic style players, I still think, Brian, there's a few out there that would improve the Celtic side. I really do. Obviously, we throw names back and forward on the group, and I'm sure everybody does the same. But there are a few players out there, Lawrence, who would improve the Celtic side. However, we are looking far and wide by the looks of it, so we're bringing in Joe Hart. There was an update of sorts on Aurelio Buta. But before I speak about right backs, Lawrence, we need to talk about Ralston's goal. I mean, that came out of nowhere. That came out of absolutely nowhere. And I just hope that we continue to appreciate the goal, because, when you're growing up and all you've got really Celtic-wise in terms of footage is the old centenary videos, and then all the various videos were released through the 90s because we were so bad you had to look back on all the old goals. And you would look back on some cracking goals. And in time, you wouldn't say it was a great goal, but we got beat 2-1 from Hearts at Tynecastle that night. And Starfelt, gave away the first goal. There's absolutely no asterisk when it's a goal of that quality. So let's have a wee chat about that, Lawrence. He has been the absolute whipping boy since he came in. Now, I think partly that is down to the fact that we're in a situation where we need to play him. And Celtic fans are frustrated that we're in that situation. We're frustrated that we're going through so many right backs since Mika Lustig left the club. And yeah, he's a hard-working pro. He's not the long-term answer. But it was a cracking goal, Lawrence.
Listen, without doubt, but it's maybe not a long-term answer, but I think it's definitely improved under Ange. I mean, the last 2 games, there's an argument he's been our best player. So he's putting in performances, and if he keeps putting in performances like that and popping up, with a wonder goal, people's perception might change. I know, as you say, we've slated him on here and said, look, he can't be the long-term answer. But listen, his performances are getting better game. And listen, that goal's going to make any show reel, isn't it? Any player would be proud of that goal. So he's given us all for a club, which is what we want. It looks to be following Ange's instructions.
Yes.
He's weighed in with just an absolute classic of a goal. He's standing up to be counted, which, wish more of the team were standing up to be counted. It's, outstanding with Tony Ralston. And, if he keeps improving and applying himself, who knows where it's going to go. Because when he first came into the team, I think we were impressed with him. And maybe that was the
you're talking effect. About originally, yeah.
Yep. Maybe that was a team effect. We thought, well, maybe we've got a right back that can do similar. He's had a bit of a hard time. He's lost his way. His loan moves didn't work out. But he's putting in shifts for us. He's scoring goals like that. He's maybe out there to try and prove a few people wrong. Listen, if he turns out to be a backup right back, then fair enough if he's keeping that level of performance.
Yeah.
But, the Hearts game itself, with 120 minutes in Europe, it's a new team thrown in, with a lot of possession. Touched on it, Hardy should have been off, goal should have stood. I didn't think it was a foul for the Hearts. When a goal came from, I didn't think saw a foul together. They just seemed to be the Hearts. He fell over, and obviously that's enough for Bobby Madden to give a foul against Celtic. But there are things we should have controlled better. We're getting in Joe Hart quicker. Delivering the man. We just don't seem to be doing these transfers quick enough. Booter, if he is the right back that comes in, how long have we been linked with him?
No, that's a concern. That's a concern, Lawrence.
And it's not like we didn't know the Hearts game is going to happen.
Yep.
We know Tynecastle's a difficult place to go. We know Hearts are a few games into their season, courtesy of the League Cup. We know we weren't going to have any fans, and we knew we'd be coming off the back of European time. The manager's been saying it for how long? He needs reinforcements. We're without a head of recruitment, without a director of football, and we're just so slow to deliver. Arguably, it's cost us 3 points. Some people argue, well, Bobby Madden's cost us 3 points. There's a bit of truth in both. But certainly, what we could have controlled is how quickly we do business, how quickly we can get these players in and onto the park and put in performances for us. And right now, definitely lack of urgency. From where I'm sitting,
there's a lack of urgency where you start the season with Tony Ralston as your first choice right back. And that is the beginning of the conversation on this one. So on the one hand, I say, let's look at the 2 players who were given a 1-year extension or 1-year deal, Brian. Lee Griffiths, Tony Ralston. Which one has stuck to the job, done what he's told, committed himself to the club, love him or loathe him, right? And actually put in a few decent performances, and everybody knows the answer to that. The other guy's never kicked a ball for Celtic since he's been given the deal. Patrick Murphy comes in. One man alone won't fix our defence. Agree with that. We still need a right back, left back, and another centre back with Julian being out. I feel we're trying to replicate what we did with Gordon through Hart. Got to give him a chance. The thing with this is we're talking about Buta, and as Lauren says, Brian, Buta's name's been linked with Celtic for a wee while now. Fabrizio Romano, the Italian Sky Sports pundit, seems to be the guy that if he says we're going to sign someone, we sign them. So he broke the Starfelt news, he broke the Joe Hart news as far as I'm aware. He must have a decent link in at Celtic Park. Let's be sure on that one. So he has told us that it's personal terms that we're kind of thrashing out with Buta. He seems to be our first choice. Brian, Royal Antwerp, right back, Portuguese, not yet an internationalist. You bring him in, and at the club we have Tony Ralston, Urhoghide, and we also have O'Connor. Similarly to the goalkeeper situation, what I would expect, I don't think if Buta comes in we're going to get another right back. I think Buta's your right back. I think Ralston will be your backup. I think you've got Urhoghide, who might get some game time, but at this moment in time he still looks pretty raw. And I think that O'Connor will be loaned out again. I mean, is that the way you're viewing that? And again, let's try and get this deal over the line ASAP.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, we've got less than 4 weeks to the end of the transfer window. I agreed with the commenter there. I would say we need, at least one right back, maybe two. We definitely need a left back, another centre half I would have. We saw what's happening with Edward. What you don't want to get to is 2 weeks to go in the transfer window and then Edward goes, because the rate we do transfers, you're not going to end any time. And the big thing about the transfers is it's insane that it's taken us so long. The story about Buta's true, and we're haggling over personal terms when allegedly he's not looking for the world. It's that biscuit tin mentality that us as the older Celtic dads, I suppose, will remember all too well. It's skimping and scraping, and when we've got the money there, just get the player in. What do you want from him? There's how much it costs, get him in the door. I don't understand why it's taken us this long. We've needed so much. It's maddening. In regards to the right back situation, though, yeah, I think Buta is number one and Ralston will be number two. One of the slight issues we have at Celtic just now is we talk about how short we are at centre half and how short we are in defence generally. But if you look at numbers, you've got Julian, Beaton, Welsh, Helge, Murray, and Urhoghide. You've technically 6.5. So the bean counters will look at that and say, well, do we need a centre half? On Starfelt, 7. And we still think we need another one. Now, I'm not saying we should be happy with that. That's indicative of how badly we've signed over the years.
Yeah.
And the complete lack to develop players. When Urhoghide's come in, and why is he there? No offence to the boy, but he's not been playing him, so he's not a starter. Is he just another squad player?
He's in that middle bit, Brian, isn't he? He's not a Colts player and he's not a first-team player. And
we've already got enough of them, so these things I'm worrying about. But on the point about Ralston, yeah, I think he's probably... It's a tricky one with Ralston, because I said last season, I think Ralston was better than Kenny. I don't think I've seen when Kenny was at the club, I didn't see anything that made me think Ralston's worse than him. Don't think Ralston's great, but he can put in a cross. He puts himself about. He seems to be trying his best, and he took a really good goal. He's not really done anything wrong, and I think he's almost the. I think people are sort of projecting onto him their frustrations at the right back situation.
Yeah,
I don't think it's actually personal. I don't think people really don't like Ralston or think he's that bad. I think it's just frustrations at the club and the way they're doing things. And to be honest, there was times during the Hearts game, and listen, if anybody seen me in a post-match, they know I can hardly control my emotions. So I can imagine during the Hearts game I was super frustrated as well at times, but I think it's still more at the club than Angela the players, if I'm honest.
I was speaking actually during the week, Brian, about that emotional element, because obviously we cover all the games, and the post-match in particular is one of the ones where you don't have time to gather your emotions. You don't really have time to even compose yourself, because we go live on the full-time whistle maybe 30 seconds later. And it's interesting, if you watch the game back, And then, maybe on the Tuesday like we're doing today, and you're looking back on the game, you have a slightly different perspective. So over the last season, I've kind of learned that, but it's difficult to keep the emotions in check, particularly, Lawrence, when it is the first time since 1997 that we've lost an opening day fixture at the worst of times as well, because everything else that's happening at Celtic at this moment in time, we needed, I think, at that point after Starfelt came in and then you get that wee boost, you want that momentum to continue, but it's almost like stop-start. Every time we get something good, it just draws back to a negative. Unfortunately, a lot of these negatives seem to be happening on the park. But I think that I'm going to try to bring the comments in on YouTube, Facebook, and on Twitter. Lazarus, who knows? Is that name actually going to be relevant here to Joe Hart? Lazarus, he's a 75-cap English international who will boss defenders once we get them all signed. A great signing at last. I think that goes back to the point, Lawrence, I made, where I actually don't have that many concerns about his performance in terms of his ability. The concern comes in the fact that he hasn't played for a while. But even before we get him to full fitness and right up to speed with regards to his performances, I still think that he's going to be more of a dominant figure than any other goalkeeper we've got in our books, Lawrence.
Yeah, definitely. He's got experience that probably we've lost a lot of in the last couple of seasons of our team, hasn't he? He's got, 4 or 5 Golden Gloves in the EPL. He's got Champions League experience. 75 England caps. He's been a top-level goalkeeper. We want to see if he can still be a top-level goalkeeper. And even if he can't hit the heights he was once at, I think even if he gets kind of 75% of the way there, there's no doubt he's better than any options that we have. Being a bit older, and with his track record, hopefully the defenders are going to listen to me a bit more. He carries a bit of gravitas with that track record he's got, isn't he? Mm. So within the team, the defender should be listening to him, should be listening to his shouts. He knows the game he played under Pep. So it's going to be a similar style under Ange. So, yeah, for me, the most frustrating part is how long this deal has taken to get done. Yep. I mean, you hear the sums involved. 15 grand a week, £1 million. The Celtic should be cash rich this time. We've just sold the season books. Not to mention Aya, Pomala, El Hamid, Frimpong. We should be cash rich just now. And it's taken us so long to get that deal over the line. It's incredibly frustrating. And we're not too sure what's going on in terms of the head of recruitment. But there's only 4 weeks left in the transfer window. This is an important time to have a head of recruitment. Absolutely. Or a director of football that could step in if you happen to find yourself without a head of recruitment. But to not have either at this time's kind of, especially when you've got a new CEO who comes from rugby. So I'm not too sure what he'll know about the workings of football transfers and how to get deals done quickly. Who's giving him a hand just now, we don't know. See the thing, Lawrence, this leads us on to the big issues at Celtic, as if the ones we've been discussing aren't big enough. We did a podcast yesterday. I call it a podcast. We did a broadcast at 12:30 yesterday, ground control to Major Dom. And the reason we did that, or one of the reasons, was that there are massive, massive concerns beyond, because what we see on the playing field is the result of a lot of these concerns. Such is the concern that there's a demonstration on Sunday. So just looking at the information sent through from Celtic Shared, there will be a demonstration outside Celtic Park this Sunday at 1 p.m. The Celtic board are continuing, says Celtic Shared, to fail massively across key areas for any successful football club, including the ongoing delay around implementation of a footballing structure befitting of a modern and progressive club, player recruitment, and an inability to move players on who no longer have anything to offer Celtic. Proper fan engagement. Don Mackay made positive noises about this when he started in his role, but all has gone quiet and we are no further forward. Celtic should go on to say we will continue to push for positive change at Celtic to ensure we are pushing for the club to reach its potential on and off the
Park. Now, there's so much to discuss here, Brian, in relation to this. First and foremost, what Lawrence says there about Dominic Mackay, and he's come in to an environment that obviously is unfamiliar to him. And what I mean by that is not just the rugby/football move. I'm talking about the fact that there's a whole job in itself in relation to buying and selling players, the whole transfer structure, the whole strategy of transfers. And, if you're coming into that environment and you don't have heads of very important departments in place, then my concern is, and by the way, this filters into Ange Postecoglou's backroom team as well. My concern is everything happens as is. So if you don't have a head of department, yet you do have the department itself, they will continue as they've always done it previously. So you've got a situation with Ange Postecoglou coming in as a manager with this philosophy, and he wants to play a certain way, Brian. Yet the people who are implementing on a daily basis on the training fields are the same people who were here during the last season's failure. So in its simplest terms, there's the footballing concern that I've got. But that actually filters in to the recruitment, because we don't have a head of recruitment, so everything just happens as is. And it also happens with regards to the so-called head of the football department or director of football role. So although we don't have anyone in these positions, Brian, someone is making the decisions of a director of football. Someone is making the decisions of a head of recruitment. Who is that person? And obviously what they'll tend to do, very much like the football side of things, is they'll revert to the strategies that have been in place and the structures that have been in place for the previous X amount of seasons. So we are operating as we were operating last season. Why are we expecting different results? So we look at the recruitment, it's as bad as it's always been. In terms of the long time that it's taken to get the deals over the line, why are we surprised at that? Because nothing's actually changed. All that's changed is the CEO. Now, when it comes to the football side of things, a lot of people have been critical of Celtic still looking leggy against Midtjylland and against Hearts. Why are we surprised at that? Because nothing's actually changed. We've just changed the manager. So the strategies and the training regimes are as is, because we're coached by the same people. The sports science, which Ange has actually criticised over the last week or so, is the same as it was last season. So surely the bigger issue is behind the scenes at Celtic. And that is, of course, why a group of Celtic fans are demonstrating at the park on Sunday.
Absolutely. And this has been something that's been growing for a while. And the reality is, Dom's going to carry the can for that. The bigger question is it fair for him to carry the can for that, having just come in? I'm not 100% sure. However, what he should be doing is communicating that. He should come out and say, look, this is the plan. And I was maybe more critical than most when he was on the original press conference, and he was talking about, modernisation and this and blah, blah, blah. He never actually gave any answers. If he said, look, this is the structure I'm going to try and put in place, as well as recruiting for players, as well as trying to get the team playing well, as well as rejigging the entire corporate infrastructure of Celtic Football Club, this is what I want to put in place. It's going to take a bit of time, but this is what I'm doing. The fact is, we've not heard any of that, so no one knows. So it just seems like there's a malaise and they're doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That's so incredibly frustrating. And I don't think it's entirely fair to expect Dom to be able to... Because look, we know Celtic was a shambles last year. The business side, it was a disgrace. The mismanagement of the squad, the mismanagement of the finances of the club, the organisational structures were all wrong. So Dom's had to come in and basically change all that on his own. That's a huge task, and it's going to take a while. The question is, most people will be aware it's going to take a while, but why is Dom not coming out and saying this is what we're trying to do? If we know, so look, let's take Postecoglou as an example. He said, this is where I'm going to play my team, this is the results I want, the performances I want, it's going to take a bit of time. Okay, we know that, you either buy in or you don't. Dom's not actually saying what the vision for the club is, other than modernisation. Well, what does that mean? Who are we looking for? Why are we not looking at, surely he could have been hiring in his first day, surely he could have said, right, there's got to be recruitment agencies that specialise in these positions. I need sports scientists, I need conditioning coaches, I need a head of recruitment, I need someone that can oversee all of that and report to me directly. Go and find me it. Meanwhile, this is what we need. Get someone in temporarily to look after recruitment. So that there seems there's mismanagement there. The reality is, I'm hesitant to really criticise him personally because we don't know if that's the case or not. Maybe he is doing that and we're just not seeing the results. It's the lack of communication that's incredibly frustrating, and that's what's harking back to last season. And I think that's what's bringing up the emotions and the thoughts that nothing's changed, because it feels like last year, it feels like we're getting fobbed off or we're sort of getting forgotten about, and you know, it's so maddening. And I think as well, you know, it's bound to cause a rift between Ange and the board as well, because if you're Ange and you've come in, you knew it's footballing wise, you knew you were up against a challenge, but he must be looking at this structure and the way this club's run and think, what am I doing here? This is supposed to be a big European powerhouse club, and it's a circus. It's madness. That's got to be frustrating for him, and I think that's played out in his interviews. I really do, and I think that, you know, I know Charlie Nicholas isn't somebody I ever agree with, but he made a point, I think it was today or yesterday, that could Postecoglou end up walking away if it gets too frustrating. I don't think that's going to happen at this stage, but at this early stage, I'm concerned. I'm thinking something's wrong in Denmark. There's a lot wrong with the club, and I think it's affecting every factor of it.
You know, the bigger concern for me would be that all these positions that we've mentioned, you know, you go back and there was substance in the fact that we were looking at this director of football and, you know, head coach kind of dream team. And back then, Lawrence, the names that were being mentioned were Harkin and Maresca. Maresca now obviously with Parma. Then we're talking about Eddie Howe, and Eddie Howe bringing in all these staff members. Eddie Howe actually determining who the head of the football department was going to be, the director of football. That all fell down, and we know, spectacularly at the last minute. So we were left with none of that. None of these people that were all lined up as part of Eddie Howe's team. But that is the circumstances behind the scenes. That is a situation that Dominic Mackay's walked into and been faced with pretty early on. But what he can do, Lawrence, is, like Brian was saying there, he can make very firm and bold decisions, and he can implement his own kind of structure pretty quickly. He can get someone in as a head of football. He can get someone in as the head of recruitment, the director of football rather. And he can, if Ange wants him to, bring in assistant managers and coaches. None of that's getting done, Lawrence. And I think that whilst it's not getting done, and whilst you're being fed information just the other week there that Dermot Desmond is going to, you know, stamp his authority on the recruitment process, and et cetera, it makes you wonder just how much has actually changed. And is that the reason why players are still unfit? The recruitment is taking an age to get anybody over the line. And obviously we don't have that modern structure that we were promised. I mean, is this something that isn't going to be fixed this season? Because I think if it's not fixed, and fixed very, very shortly, then this season is going to be almost like a hangover of last season.
Listen, the problem with it is they haven't put a timescale on it for us, so we don't know the timescale they're working to. You think you'd want ahead of recruitment in before the transfer window shuts.
You think that day one of the transfer window, you think you'd have a head of recruitment in. Yep.
If we don't have the capacity with ourselves and head of recruitment, sports science, Ange has said that's another one that's missing on the director of football. You can either get the capacity in, or you can share it, or you can bring in somebody on a temporary basis. What we can't do is nothing, which is what we appear to be doing. So we know that's our weaknesses, and what we appear to be doing is quite happy to run with the weaknesses. Now, if Tom's saying, listen, I like longer to sort it out, I want to make sure I'm putting in the correct structure long term, I'm going to delay that decision in December, but in the short term we've got weaknesses. I'm going to look out who can come in the short term and help us. Now, whether that's approaching somebody like Gordon Strachan, Martin O'Neill, whoever. But what you can't do is nothing, which is you can't do nothing and expect positive results, which appear to be the route we're going down.
It does at the moment. And also, it then leads you to the point Brian made there about, and you know, you look at a manager who's managed 3 games and the headline being that Brian was referring to is he might walk away and all this kind of stuff. One point I would make is that we haven't shown him the same faith that we were shown Eddie Howe, Brian, in terms of here's your entire structure, go and build something long-standing. Now, from what I've heard from Ange Postecoglou, he does want to build something here at Celtic, but I don't know if he's been given the tools. And the players that he needs, it's taken too long for them to get in. The issue last season was the exact same. We didn't get Foster, so we went out and got Barkas. We didn't get Tony, so we went out and got a Yeti. And we know what happened with that. So we are repeating the same errors that we made last season. And I think that we've already raised the subject that, you know, there was a period of time where you've got, this is the board and this is the old regime, and there's Dom Mackay, and he's kind of pinned on. There'll come a time, and I think the time's fast approaching, whereby, you know what, it's all the board, and you're in with the board there, Dom, and, you know, these decisions have to be made, and if you don't make them, it's on your head. The same thing eventually is going to happen with the manager, because that's football, and that's the way that football works if you don't get results. You know, there's only so much sympathy you can get if you don't win match day 2, or if you don't win on Thursday night, and we'll talk about the game as well on Thursday night. So at what point do you think that happens, Brian? I mean, it's great bringing in players. As I say, you get a wee boost in your kind of like momentum where you bring in Furuhashi and you meet him and you speak to him and you hear great things, and then we have a bad result. Same thing happened with Abada. He comes in and you're looking at his shorey on his scores and and then you get another bad result. So it seems to be that, and then we're back on that upward trajectory now with Hart, and we've got a game on Thursday night. So that seems to be the way. At what point do you think, Brian, does it come to the stage where, as a fan base, we don't differentiate? We say, you know what, it's the board, and you're part of that, Dominic. And then it's the football department not working well enough, and Ange, you're part of that.
I think it would do, as I mentioned earlier, I think it would depend on communication. I think if there's a change in, we say, this is a strategy we're rolling out, this is, as Lawrence said, this is the timescale, I think people might be a bit more patient. But this radio silence stuff that was so disastrous last season, and is becoming more prevalent again this season, that's going to directly affect fans' interpretation of Postecoglou's results and performances. And if that comes on quickly, like, as I say, I've been a big supporter of Postecoglou's, and I've said for the start, I think it's going to be 6 months minimum before the club's in a stable position. I think it will take this season before he usually get the team playing and the players that he wants. But even still, I was furious at what I was seeing. So if my patience is running out and I'm one of the backers and trying to be realistic about it, I can only imagine how other people are going to be. And quite rightly so as well. They're paying their money to go and watch a product. And again, paid their money in good faith, by the way, because when Don came in and we sold all our season tickets, that was beyond our expectation. The Celtic fans bought in hook, line and sinker. The fault wasn't with them. It's with the board. And you spoke about some of the transfer business. It's like Asda with Celtic. It's like you order 2 tins of beans, and you don't have them in stock, so they send you a loaf. Do you know what I mean? It's getting ridiculous now. And I say it comes down to communication. One thing that popped into my head when we're talking about like elite club structures. I remember when Brendan Rodgers came in, and he basically changed lots about how the club was working. And I think even a lot of the conditioning, sports science guys, the extra backroom team, all these extra levels to make it a bit more professional. Apparently, you know, it's sort of PowerPoint presentations for each player and telling him he's got his plan, his strategy, all this sort of high-level stuff, which is what elite clubs operate at. Then when he left and he took all that with him, Lennon and Law basically went, yeah, we could probably do it without all that. We don't really need that. It's like when you try to put up a cabinet and you can't get the last screw in, and you think, oh, do you know, 4 screws will be enough, that'll hold it, don't need the 5th one. That was what it was like. They almost done it in the cheap. And I think when Postecoglou's came in, and people can talk about his football and background, whatever, but these Japanese clubs are well run. They're wealthy, they're ambitious. They've probably got these kind of elite structures in place. His national setup, I'd imagine, would have been the same. For him to come into Celtic and not have any of that, he must be asking questions and saying, what do you expect? I'm telling you this is what you're telling me I'm going to get it, and you know I've not even got a right back in yet.
You know your point there, you're saying let's do it on the cheap. I actually think it creeps more into the complacency rather than, you know, doing it on the cheap. And it goes back to say some of the podcasts we've had over last season, the complacency that is part of the issue, which has fed into the malaise at Celtic Park. And now we've been caught napping because, we've got to a point, like you say, where we've got one right back on the books going into Champions League qualifier. A Champions League qualifier that is going to give you access to the biggest income stream, bigger income stream than your season ticket money coming in. Yet we're underprepared for it. It's astonishing. And the point you make about the season tickets, Brian, as much as it's difficult and as much as it's expensive to buy a season ticket, I did expect the Celtic fan base to go out last season because of the relevance of the season and what we're going out to try and win. This season's a much bigger and harder sell, yet the Celtic fans have still stood up to that and we've still bought in massive numbers. And it's now time for the club to realise that, you can't keep going back to that well if, us as a fan base aren't getting what we want. Because we ask for nothing back physically. We just ask for the team on the park to be performing to the standards that we expect. Some brilliant comments coming in on the socials. Chris, on YouTube, if one man can get Joe Hart going again, it's Stevie Woods. I think the only goalie he's not managed that with is probably Barkas, unfortunately. Daniel Mack, I'm not sure if I'm not following the conversation, stop talking like a dentist. Being a Celtic fan's a wee bit like getting spoken to by a dentist. This is going to hurt for a while. It's still hurting. We're into the next season and it's still hurting. And then we have Jay Hamilton coming in on Periscope. Hart will bring our standards up. I think it will. I think he will, as a goalkeeper, bring the standards up, but also dominate in the areas that we need someone dominant in. We're going to be bringing together an almost whole new defence. With Starfelt obviously being the first part of that. I was quite surprised that Stephen Welsh didn't partner him, I've got to say, against Hearts. There's a few other things to discuss, but before we move on from the board, as I was saying there, Lawrence, we've got a demonstration happening on Sunday. What I would ask the question at this moment in time, obviously, I'm thinking back to when the demos happened back in the early 90s, and they were actually, very successful. How successful do you think they are now with this board? Because we've spoken about the board being complacent. They're actually looking at Celtic fans, many of them, I believe, with contempt. When they look at that, do you think it will make the point that the fans want it to make? Because I honestly think a big part of the issue is that we're ignored as a fan base.
I don't think any recent demos have achieved anything. Maybe they've been counterproductive. So should we expect this to be different? It's Dom's now the CEO. Doubt it. I don't think it's really going to change anything. See, the worrying thing is we know where the weaknesses are. Celtic have identified where the weaknesses are. It's a lack of action on it. It's not like they don't know the structure's wrong. It's not like they don't know recruitment's a problem. So, it's not drawing attention to the fact that, by the way, guys, this is the bits that aren't working. They already know that. Mm-hmm. It's a complete lack of action. Well, on the face of it, the lack of action to address it, structurally. And I don't think a fan demo is going to change that. It's not like the 90s when you were forcing a ball down. You had the back team side the board, starving them of income, etc. That's not kind of, I suppose, this demo and that what should be the end game point at the moment of that particular demo. But just to get back to the Heart will bring our standards up. I'm going to say wouldn't, because our standards are not so much set by the strongest link, but by your weakest link. And that's where our problems are.
Yeah.
We get people at the club that, thankfully, we're moving a lot of them out that don't want to be there. That definitely let the standards drop. But look at Eddie for one. I said he shouldn't have played in Europe. And he gave us nothing.
No.
And I'm not too sure how he maintains his place in the team. It's certainly not in form. It's not an attitude and it's not an application. So why are we still playing? If anything, his value's dropping every time he takes it apart because
it's counterproductive.
Abject performances.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's...
Do you start with him on Thursday night, Lawrence?
No. I mean, why? What's he done to start?
Who would you start with? I mean, we're looking at the bench. Let's say we're looking at other strikers. Griff doesn't get a mention at the moment. I don't know when and if he will. We've obviously got Ayeti, But Furuhashi yesterday in the fan media conference was talking about playing up top.
Yeah, well, I think that's where he finished his time in Japan. Is playing up top, although most of the left, isn't he? But I think he fit. So if Ange's bringing him in, it depends if he sees him as a left winger or up top. But for me, I would put Ajeti and Furuhashi both ahead of Eddie starting up top. Because Eddie has given us so little. And what we're saying to start him is, you know what, that's acceptable on the park. That's acceptable, that amount of effort to keep it.
That lack of effort, yeah.
That's the standards acceptable. And for me, it's not. You know, and it doesn't matter, you can have all the talent in the world. He's obviously not applying himself 100%.
The thing is, we keep hearing all these terms, Brian, about his head not being in the game and all this kind of stuff. What it comes down to is effort. It comes down to effort. And, you know, Ralston, who gets such a hard time, no one could question his commitment when he's on the park. And maybe it's different last season with Christie, but I think so far this season, you know, Christie's looked committed. He's been working hard. I think that on Thursday night, Brian, that Ange is going to shuffle his pack. And it wouldn't surprise me if Edouard dropped to the bench. It also wouldn't surprise me if Turnbull drops to the bench for a couple of reasons. If indeed he was to do that, do you see Christie playing a number 10 role, Furuhashi maybe playing on the left, Forrest on the right? How do you think Ange will approach this game on Thursday? It's another bite at the European cherry, isn't it?
I think you played Furuhashi up through the middle. Because he plays with front three, I think he wants to rotate a bit more. I think, you know, we look at Forrest coming in and shooting, Abada coming in and shooting, and Furuhashi dropping and moving. So I think that movement is what he fancies, because he's not really asking Eddie to hold up the ball or be the physical presence. So I think Furuhashi will fit in there fine. And again, I think with the three plays, I think Sorrow sits deeper, and McGregor and Turnbull have been playing almost as tense almost. That's attacking mid. So I think I would probably drop Turnbull as well, and I can't believe I'm saying that because I absolutely love him, but he either needs a rest or he needs more training because he's not quite performed. Christie actually has, whether that's to get himself a move or no is a different thing. But then that's the difference between Eddie and Christie, I suppose, isn't it? Because if Christie's want to move, he's break his back to get it, whereas Eddie's going through the motions.
Yeah.
And look, just on balance as well, just to be fair, with Eddie, it might be the case he's been asking for a move for a while and offered more money elsewhere, and he doesn't want to put himself at risk of getting injured. You know, maybe he said, look, I can go and get 60 grand a week elsewhere, can I go? And Celtic have said, no. And he said, well, why should I put myself through the wall for you? Maybe that's the case, I don't know. I'm just trying to be a bit of balance on it, but either way, it needs to be dropped because the effort's not there, and it's starting to become the case that people are turning on him now, and I don't like to see that happening. He's gave us a lot of good memories over the years, and I would hate for him to become this sort of hate figure.
You see the thing, Brian, right? I'm looking at this, and sometimes because it happens so gradually and we enter the modern age of football, that things are almost agreeable to an extent, whereas in the past it would never have been tolerated. So you're watching this unfold over the last couple of days where Harry Kane hasn't bothered to turn up for his work Monday and Tuesday. I mean, let's call it his work. Let's not say he's not turned up for training, right? He's not turned up for his work for 2 days. He hasn't bothered to turn up. Now, for me, I'm looking at that, thinking to myself, with his lifestyle, with his wages, with everything that comes with it, and the fact that when you're at that level, when you're playing for England, etc., you're a role model to so many others, yet you behave like a spoilt child, phoning in sick, even if he has phoned in on a Monday. And we see it in smaller examples and to different degrees at clubs like Celtic. I mean, we've had issues with Boyata in the past. Obviously, the AEK Athens debacle. We've had issues with players that we're discussing right now. Edouard, so although he's not refusing to play, he's on the park and he's hardly trying a leg by the looks of things. And I mean, I'm an observer. I'm watching it from an observer's perspective. There were some circumstances last season that fed into that. Yes, he had COVID. Yes, the club had numerous issues and he wasn't the only one that underperformed. But I'm getting more and more frustrated with this modern footballer who just downs tools like this, right? And I know that's a cliche, not playing for the manager, downing tools, etc. But we've seen it for the last 48 hours, running on a loop. It's just like watching WWF wrestling. It's just a drama. Harry Kane hasn't turned up for training. They're standing outside waiting on him with the live cameras. It's an absolute joke. And I think footballers in this modern age need to really wise up to that, because, you know, what happens is they go to another club, but they're still the same spoilt little child that's gone on strike for a couple of days. You know, Edouard wants to get a move. Well, do what Chris Ayer did. Now, you might have enjoyed his performances or not, but again, he was dedicated to the cause. He got his move. Christie looks as though he's trying to follow the same kind of template there. Edouard isn't. So I think when we go into Thursday night, if he's on the bench, he's got no one else but himself to blame. I don't know who he would play up front, because I think, you know, in terms of a striker, we're really lacking in that area. Ayeti hasn't done it, although he's been given a few pre-season games. And then we're looking, like you say, perhaps at Furuhashi and everybody moving around up top, Brian. But it will be interesting to see. We're playing a team who last season came third in the top division, the Czech top division. Now, if you look at our friends, if I can call them that, who came second, Sparta Prague, and what they did to us last season, this is a side that weren't far behind Sparta Prague last season. They came third. How do you fancy your chances on Thursday night, Brian?
Again, I'm the eternal optimist. I slagged the club and then I get my hopes up and I think I'm going to do it. It really depends what Celtic shows up. As I mentioned earlier, the games against Hearts and Midtjylland, we control possession. If we'd have took our chances, we'd have won them. It'll be the same case again. I think if we play to our strengths, we go attacking, we take our chances, I think we should do it. We shouldn't have anything to fear. But the big caveat is, you know, what's going to happen. I think if Joe Hart starts, and I think he will, you can be a bit more confident at the back. Maybe the defence would then be a bit more confident. Again, it's another week or another few days training under Ange. You'd be hoping for a reaction. So I think I win. I tweeted before the Hearts game that we'd have a comfortable 3-1 victory, and that tweet's been circulated amongst other fans of other clubs for a while. So I'm hesitant to say comfortable, but I think we'll win.
Lawrence, Brian reckons we're going to win on Thursday night. It's obviously a away leg. We don't have away goals to deal with. Would you be happy to come back with anything other than a loss? I mean, I reckon a draw at this moment in time. I'd be quite happy with that.
Yeah, I'd grab a draw. Listen, all going well. We've got a new keeper between the sticks. Starfield's played his second game. We don't know who would partner him. Right now, I think a draw would be decent for us and bring him back to Celtic Park. Hopefully then, you know, the team, Furuhashi, Starfelt, Hart, I've got to know their teammates a bit better by that time. But I think a draw would be a good result for us away in Europe. Do I think we've got a to win? Very much depends on the players we put in the park. I think if we start somebody like Eddie with a man down, I think it's coming at a situation. I know we've watched Forrest back, so I don't know how fit he is. Up top, at least we've got options, you know. You've got Furuhashi, you've got Abada, you've got Christie. You do have a few options, players that are fit, depending on what we're going to play. And by the looks of it, apply themselves, you know, are going to try. So, but yeah, I'd be happy if we come back with, you know, anything other than a loss. The team could really do with a win, but certainly what we couldn't do was another defeat.
Let's not even think about it. It's 4:45 kick-off Thursday night. We'll be covering it on Axom as we always do, half an hour before kick-off, half-time, and for 30 minutes on the full-time whistle. It's been great once again to be joined by Lawrence Connolly and Brian Degning, this time on the Tuesday Bulletin. I'm wishing my days away here. The Tuesday Axon Bulletin. Thanks everybody for getting involved in the Facebook discussion and also on Twitter and YouTube. We'll be back at 12:30 tomorrow on A Celtic State of Mind.